It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague in the danger zone in Rainford is Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
Very well. It is feeling particularly dangerous around here, probably because it's the time of year that people start spreading muck on the field, so the whole village stinks.
I'm sure, added to the fact, the UK is going through, one of them heat waves where they tell me every other country in the world where it's hotter than will not help that stench.
It really does not.
I do like that when the news tells me it's hotter here than Ibiza. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm not going to Ibiza, so
I
don't care.
The other 360 days of the year on the Ibiza news, they say they're hotter than Rainford.
Well, as I'm presuming the Ibiza news is just Granada tonight, I can imagine they probably would.
I might see if I can find Ibiza news. It sounds like fun. This week, much to my chagrin, but because we do have to do it every year, we will be previewing the NFC East. There's one way to think about it. We're getting out of the way early, as it's only our second preview show, and we'll already have gotten rid of Washington, which is always good news. We're also going to highlight Neil's wide receiver fancy rankings, his top 10. We'll look at the PPR and ask questions about it. As usual, when it comes to the preview, we will look at biggest off-season headline, the big question, a fantasy darling, a fantasy buyer beware, and how we think that team will be discussed towards the end of the year. As always, I look forward to it, especially as one of our teams is good, quote unquote, according to his wide receiver, I think. He sent out a sardonic genius tweet yesterday, which I was very impressed by. Let us start the show, Neil, and let's get on almost immediately with your top 10 wide receivers. So as we said, during the off season, during the build up to the season, we're going to look at your fancy rankings. This week we're looking at wide receivers, and Neil has decreed that this will be PPR and no other format is appropriate. Neil, do you want to give your top 10 wide receivers, please, from 10 to 1, if that's okay?
Absolutely. So from 10 to 1, number 10 we have Mike Williams. Then we have Michael Pittman, Deebo Samuel, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp.
The ADP PPR top 10 at present is Keenan Allen at 10, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Cooper Kupp. So, similar top 3, and I have a question on the top 3 or the third one actually. If we highlight continually the volume is king in these type of situations, are you concerned about Jamar Chase having to share targets with T. Higgins?
Not in the slightest, as last year in terms of fantasy points per game, Jamar Chase was the wide receiver 5, and he did this despite seeing only the 17th most targets among all wide receivers. He had the 23rd highest target share among wide receivers. He doesn't bother me at all because he's shown he is a big play waiting to happen. This is, evidenced by the fact that he saw 30 deep targets. These statistics and percentages are all courtesy of Player Profiler, because where else would I get them? Yeah, he saw 30 deep targets. It was nearly 2 a game. Where else did we? And also he was 5th in yards after the catch with 550. So we know this is a player who has a healthy share of targets, not a top ultimate 30%er, which I'm sure we'd all love, but as you say, he does have T. Higgins on the offense with him. But we know that he gets targeted deep, and we know that when he gets the ball in his hands, he can rack up the yak. So no, I have absolutely no fears with him sharing with another stud wide receiver.
You have Mike Evans at 6, Neil, and he's not in the top 10 on ADP. Why do you love Mike Evans so much?
I love Mike Evans so much because the one big thing that has changed for Mike Evans in the Tom Brady era is he doesn't have as big a target share as he once had. So under other quarterbacks, like Jameis Winston or Bradkowski or people of that ilk, even Josh McCown, going back there. But one thing that has improved for Mike Evans while Tom Brady has been his quarterback is his touchdowns. Now he was already, he already did his share, of touchdown scoring, but it has increased since Tom Brady arrived. Now, if we just allow me to waffle a little bit while I pull up the stats that I need to back this up, and they'll be up here in just a second. Talk amongst yourselves, everyone. Yes, so since 2016, Mike Evans has played 97 games. In games with Tom Brady, his targets is 6.9 per game. It was 9.4 before. His receiving yards is 63.8. It was 83.4. But his receiving touchdowns in the other games was 0.5 per game. With Tom Brady, it's 0.84. So he's averaging nearly a touchdown a game. Now, Rob Gronkowski has gone. He apparently claims that if Tom Brady calls him later in the season to come out of retirement, he'll tell him no. Bullshit. So anyway, but for the time being, there's no Rob Gronkowski. We know there's no Chris Godwin initially, and Chris Godwin is one of Brady's favourite red zone weapons. So there's no him. There's no Gronk. We already know that Mike Evans is going to command and score a lot of touchdowns because he was put on this earth to do it. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Mike Evans could finish with 20 receiving scores this season.
That's a large number. Neil, in the Los Angeles Chargers battle, you have picked Mike Williams over Keenan Allen. Why is that the case?
I'm chasing upside. I think Keenan Allen has the safer floor, because we know that he's going to work closer to the line of scrimmage. He's going to get the layups, for want of a better word. Mike Williams has field stretching capability and also has shown more of a knack to get in the end zone than Keenan Allen has. So when you're getting this, at that stage of your drafts, as much as you want safety, but I just think Mike Williams offers more of a ceiling. And I think he has the potential to have the 25 to 30 point weeks that I really don't think Keenan Allen has in his locker anymore.
Final question, Neil. Last week in running backs, JTT was 1. You have Pittman at 9 in your wide receiver rankings. Does a reliance on the run game in Indianapolis concern you on the pickup of Pittman in the top 10?
Again, not really where Pittman's going in terms of ADP, because teams could be as run heavy as they want, as long as they're not, we're going to throw it 5 times a game. We're not in the 1960s here. A team's wide receiver 1 is always going to have value, and especially if they have the chemistry that seems to have developed between Matt Ryan and Michael Pittman. So that's going to help them in the in the red zone with the end zone targets. Is that Pittman is, in my opinion, you look at this, he's so clearly the alpha. So I think he's going to command a large target share. He's going to get a good share of red zone targets as well. So he's got the weekly touchdown upside. Just Jonathan Taylor can still be the running back 1. That's not going to change. But I think Michael Pittman, from where he's going, is a safe wide receiver 1, and could flirt with wide receiver top 5 if the touchdowns come in.
Fantastic stuff, Neil. Always good to look at your rankings. That is running back and wide receiver sorted. Still to come, tight end and quarterback, but we will get onto them later in the weeks to come. Let us get on with the bulk of the show, Neil. Let us talk about our division, the NFC East, and we will start right away. NFC East, they play this year the AFC South, the NFC North, one NFC West team, one AFC North team, and one NFC South team. Could be more difficult, let's be honest. AFC South is Pooh George, and one of the NFC, and the NFC North is not exactly spectacular. We'll start with where else would you start, Neil? America's team, the great, the everyone's preseason darlings, the Dallas Cowboys. Biggest
not everyone's. Not ours.
Not ours, but I think we're in the minority. I always find it I say this now as we digress greatly. I do find it tremendously interesting, and maybe it's because I avoid them like the plague. But you hardly see any Dallas Cowboys fans in the UK. It's not a major franchise in terms of what it is in America, right? You don't. They were good when the NFL first came about, but for whatever reason, they are not a. It doesn't seem like a fancy team when you see it the likes of New England and Pittsburgh and stuff like that. But I'll move on. Biggest off-season headline was a loss of some big stars, which is unlike the Cowboys as they try and keep them on. And actually, one of the reasons they lost some is because they kept the others on. We do have a big question, though.
I ask the questions.
Is the success of this team dependent on the idea that losing talent on offense will make them better?
Yeah, addition by subtraction. Say they have lost Amari Cooper. They obviously decided that having a $20 million wide receiver wasn't good business. But then they gave him away. And then all of a sudden the league started having $25 million wide receivers, which all of a sudden makes Amari Cooper look a bit more of a value. You live your own life, Dallas. I'm not here to tell you how to do what you want to do. Yeah, this team is still hampered by the fact that they chose to give a record-setting contract to Ezekiel Elliott. And as much as they won't admit it, because they're still clinging to the idea that he was worth it, they've had to make sacrifices elsewhere. And that has been, say they've lost Elliott. They didn't sign Cedric Wilson, who was a pretty good wide receiver 3. Michael Gallup, they've signed him on, but he's not going to be there for the opening weeks of the season. They don't want to give Dalton Schultz a long-term deal. They've got till Friday to agree to a long-term deal with him, otherwise he plays on the tag. And it's odd. Now, this team's success, as you say, is predicated on the fact that all these pieces have gone and that maybe they can replace them. Yeah, your head coach is still Mike McCarthy. He's still a man who's going to coach small in the big moments. Yes, you were right, I know. For anyone who isn't watching, and hopefully none of you are watching, Mainsy is making the "I told you so" hand gestures. Yeah, Mike McCarthy's a terrible head coach. But if we are to believe that Kellen Moore is the offensive play caller, down the stretch, his play calling went down the toilet as well. Now, if we assume that their defense is still good, no, you have defensive playmakers. Trayvon Diggs is not intercepting 15 passes this season. He's just not. The great Jimmy Kempski, and of course I'm going to call him great, he's a friend of the show and he's an Eagles writer, does frequently point out and did write this season about what happens to teams who have such a healthy turnover margin one season to the next, and it goes down by about 15. Well, there's your picks, Trayvon. Now, I'm not saying Trayvon Diggs is a bust. I'm not saying he's a terrible cornerback. I'm just saying he's not going to intercept 15 passes. There have been 2 players in NFL history who've gone back-to-back seasons with 10 or more interceptions. And I assure you, you haven't heard of any of them.
Now, we played this game over text. I was nowhere near either of them, which was, no fun.
Well, one of them played for a team called the Baltimore Colts. Yes, that did happen. And his next season was with the Dallas Texans. Not the Dallas Texans that became the Kansas City Chiefs. This was an earlier iteration of the Dallas Texans. So the team that's now moved and a team that doesn't exist. That's how far we've got to go back for back-to-back 10 interception seasons by a defensive player.
Can I just stop you briefly to say that leads me to believe, and not believe, but know, that 3 times people have thought that the only name they can think of for a football team is Texans. For God's sake, Texas, you've got to be better than that.
Yeah. I mean, the Houston Oilers, that's good. We know it. There's a lot of oil in Texans. So what have you got for your team? Texans. My God, how much did you pay the PR people to come up with that? I mean, at least the Baltimore Ravens, Ravens. Well, Edgar Allan Poe, he wrote the Ravens. Oh, okay, yeah. Carolina Panthers. Oh, okay, we'll go with that. Jaguars. Oh, well, Jacksonville. So is that? Yeah. What have you got? Texans. Oh, for Dallas are going to score. Cowboys are going to score a lot of points. They're going to concede a lot of points. They're going to coach small when it needs to be big. Are they going to be awful and finish 4-13-1? No. Are they going to be in the hunt? Probably.
I think you're right. I think sometimes, and it's easy to do, you just assume that if the defense was good last year, it'll be good this year, and that is very rarely the case. And you already highlighted it from Jimmy in terms of, like, turnover isn't a sticky stat. It changes from year to year, and to get that many last year would lead people to believe that it won't be as good this year. Dak Prescott wasn't great towards the end of the year. I think that's probably an understatement. He needs to be better. The Ezekiel Elliott issue is an issue for me. I know you pay him a load of money, but he's the second best running back on the team. I know that it gets a bit debatable at that point, but I'm not. If it's debatable whether it's him or Tony Pollard, then you've definitely played Ezekiel Elliott too much money. I think I'm with you in the terms of, we could argue till we're blue in the face about what they can do. Are they great? No. Are they good? Yeah. Will they show flashes? Probably. Yeah. But are they gonna win 13 games? Not for me. Let's find out who Neil thinks from a fantasy point of view, because they are a fantasy relevant team. Who the fantasy darling is?
Hello, darling.
Well, I think that how late Dak Prescott is going, he seems to be underappreciated. Yes, he has lost a security blanket in Amari Cooper, but while he's not rushing as much as he used to do in his early years, he still offers a rushing component. He could average 40 yards on the ground a week, and there's your extra 4 points, which if you play in one of those bizarre leagues that only awards 4 points for a passing touchdown, that's another touchdown for him. So I think he's going quarterback 11 at the moment. I think that's too low, personally. Because I don't think the defense is going to be as good, so I think they're going to have to play fast, which they do, and they're going to have to pass the ball more than they would ideally like to. So I like Dak Prescott where he's going.
Obviously, we need to find out who's the buyer beware.
It's Ezekiel Elliott. Everyone becomes a value at some point, but there's some drafts he's still going in the second round. It's not 2016, folks. He might score a couple of touchdowns, but is he going to get 25 carries, 150 and 2 touchdowns? No. He's going to give you the Jerome Bettis line. 17 carries, 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. You can have weeks where that's going to be good, but you can have weeks sometimes with 17 carries, 60 yards, and he doesn't find the end zone, and he doesn't catch passes. I can't take him earlier than the 5th round. If I'm 0 RBing and he's my running back 1, that's the chance I took. But I don't think anyone should be taking him with a running back 1 earlier than that. I don't think he's got it anymore. It's as you say, if it's a question between him and Tony Pollard, he's ridiculously overpaid, and he was anyway.
Dallas Cowboys, are they more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl or not at all, Neil?
Week 18, because the NFC is so poor. The NFC East is still bizarrely without a repeat winner since 2004. Super Bowl? Nope. Mike McCarthy's the head coach, Jerry Jones is the general manager, and the Dallas Cowboys, they choke, so no.
It is in Week 18. What I would say is, interesting schedule in a couple of situations. The bye week is Week 9, which is obviously right slap bang in the middle, which is interesting. And it gives you an excellent narrative of what will be discussed at that point. First 2 games are both at home, both against good teams, Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Then you play the Giants, the Commanders, the Rams and Eagles on the road, Detroit and Chicago. If they're 6-2, 5-3, people start talking, because when they come back from there, they're at Green Bay. But after that, they then go at Minnesota, who I'm not sure are good. Against the Giants at home, the Colts at home, the Texans at home, at Jacksonville. So that's your, before they play Philadelphia in Week 16, which at the moment is 9:25 on Fox, but I almost guarantee will be flexed to Sunday night, as those two teams battle it out for the vaunted NFC East crown. Neil, let's move on. New York Football Giants, biggest off-season headline. A new team at the top, a new GM and a new coach. Kind of discussed last week, stealing the brain trust or sections of the brain trust from the Buffalo Bills. The big question:
I ask the questions.
can this team win games with Daniel Jones as its quarterback, given all the other changes around them?
There are two different types of teams that finish with losing seasons. There is teams that was progress, and there's teams of fire everyone. After one season, you'd presume that the Giants probably aren't going to be in the fire everyone, unless it's oh God, we've hired Joe Judge again, which I don't think Brian Daboll's going to be. Daniel Jones wishes that if he worked very hard and was a very good boy, and was very good to his parents and did all his homework, that he'd grow up to be in the Kirk Cousins zone. And by that I mean the worst type of quarterback to have. Can you do better? Yes, but you don't want to do worse. However, Daniel Jones is not in the Kirk Cousins zone and never will be. He was overdrafted. He has not shown consistent ability to be an NFL starting quarterback. Fumbles too often. In comparison, doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. He actually fumbles. So, it's as I say, you can either throw interceptions or take sacks and fumble the ball. You can't do both. I don't know which is worse, but I suspect probably, fumbles probably because, you've been hit, probably. So, you're inviting that danger. I just don't think he's up to it. I think they will try and design an offense to make him better and get the best out of him with the pieces around him. But ultimately, I think he will let them down. Are they going to go winless? No. Could I see them winning? Can I see them winning 8 games? No. 5 to 6, maybe 7, possibly. Because again, the NFC East, they'll do something stupid. They'll beat one. They'll win one of the Eagles games. They'll split the series against Washington. They'll do something stupid, maybe to play themselves out with the top 5 when they actually need to be in the top 5. But I don't think 2022 is about winning. I think it's about seeing where they are with the players they've got and who they need to get shot of. So I can't see them winning enough games to be relevant, and I think Daniel Jones will have made the franchise's mind up for them by at least Thanksgiving.
I mean, we are more negative than some on Daniel Jones, but I do tend to agree, Neil. I think if you look where the franchise is and the picks they took, which were sensible picks in Thibodeau and Evan Neal lineman, you are rebuilding, and there wasn't really a quarterback available to pick this year. So riding out with Daniel Jones this year, don't think they've picked up his. They're not going to pick up his 5th-year option, are they? I don't think
they haven't.
They haven't, have they?
No.
And you wouldn't necessarily expect them to. They do have some talented players. Just it never seems to work. If you see what Kenny Golladay can do and what Kenny Golladay has done and what Kadarius Toney could do, they are weapons. But I'm just not convinced by Daniel Jones in any way, shape, or form. They need to make sure pretty quickly that if they think it's going to go as bad as it's going to go, that Daniel Jones doesn't cost them games, because he's not like the worst quarterback ever. He's just not a quarterback who you're going to win consistently with and want to be your franchise quarterback. So you might want to get him out the way, because he might accidentally win some games. I mean, let's be frank. I mean, not that Washington are any great shakes, but Daniel Jones looks like flipping Peyton Manning in an AFC South game when he used to play for the Colts when he plays Washington. So yeah, it's a tough one, and he's not the answer. The answer for quarterback isn't on the roster, so they kind of probably need to make sure they don't win enough games so they can have a chance of getting to that person.
I mean, his problem is that over the last 2 years, the New York Giants have not scored very many touchdowns. We can put this down to Jason Garrett and Joe Judge as well.
That is the understatement of the millennia.
Yeah,
I think the Jets scored 8 more touchdowns than the Giants last year, and the Jets were second bottom.
In his career, he has played 38 games, 37 starts. He has 45 touchdown passes at a 3.5% touchdown rate. He has 29 interceptions at a 2.3% rate. That's not terrible. That's not a terrible ratio. What is terrible, however, is, as I say, it's 37 games. And he's fumbled 36 times.
Yeah, might need to use that stickum, right? Let's find out if we believe anyone is a fancy darling on this team.
Hello, darling.
Well, Kenny Golladay was supposed to be an ideal fit for Daniel Jones because while he didn't do it often, when he did choose to throw deep, he was generally quite accurate at it, and that's Golladay's shtick. I'll go down. I'm not open, but I'm not covered. You know what I mean? So, just put it up there and I'll catch it. But I think what we saw in the limited sample size, that from, in a PPR format, Kadarius Toney going around wide receiver 40 is excellent value because he's shown he can flash. He's got big play potential. And also he had that one game where, didn't he have 13 targets, 11 receptions, or 180 yards against the Cowboys?
Yeah.
Now, there's been a bit of negative press about Kadarius Toney this off-season, that maybe he didn't mesh initially with the brain trust, or, maybe he's not 100% football 100% of the time. But from where he's going, I think all these doubts are baked into his ADP. I know Josh Norris is a massive fan, especially at his ADP. So I think if you can get him where he's going, you're getting the potential of he's going to be a solid wide receiver 3, if anyone gives a crap about such a thing. But he's got potential to be a decent wide receiver 2, even with a poor quarterback.
Let's find out who Neil is petrified of picking.
Saquon Barkley. This offense has not helped, but he's not the player he was in his rookie season. I don't think that player's coming back. As great as he was, the 2,000 yards from scrimmage, a wonderful receiving weapon, making guys miss, the injuries mount up. And unfortunately, the running back position, these players get old quickly. So where he's going is like running back 10. It pains me, but I just think there are 15 running backs I'd rather take than Saquon Barkley. Especially on an offense that I don't think is going to run the ball. Because we've seen in Buffalo, Brian Dable just decides, I won't run the ball. I don't need to, so I won't. So we're banking on him getting checkdowns. But we saw last season, if you remember, I made the stats, that Eli Manning made Saquon Barkley more of a receiving back than Daniel Jones has done. So while everyone becomes a value at some point, running back 10 for Saquon is too rich for my blood.
Is the Saquon in real life? Is the Saquon Barkley draft pick the last time we ever do this? Is that the last time that someone falls for this trap?
Well, it's that Arrested Development gif, isn't it? Does it work? No, it never does, but it might work for us. Someone that will come along, someone will get, it's that word, generational. Someone will trick themselves into it. I hope not, but it will happen. Go to sleep.
New York Football Giants more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
Draftniks, because they need a quarterback, and I don't think Jones is. I think if they saw themselves getting into a position where they thought maybe Jones was going to play them out of it, they may take the decision to shut him down. And I don't know who the backup is now. Is it Jake Fromm still or Mike Glennon? Yeah. I don't think they're going to let Daniel Jones ruin their future, because he certainly hasn't helped their past.
I think the issue with these teams in the NFC East is they play a lot of bad teams. And that's an issue if you are, for example, the New York Giants, because if you're trying to get in the top 5, you need to only win 3 games, and that's going to be tough because you play some garbage. This is a stretch of games for them between week 7 and week 11. It's got a bye week in the middle as well. At Jacksonville, at Seattle, versus the Texans, versus the Lions. Pardon? Week 2 at home to Carolina.
Oh, the humanity.
Do you know, based on the way the league has panned out, their NFC West team and the NFC North team are Carolina and Seattle. Like, they might win those 2 games by not on purpose. Do you know what I mean? So I have a feeling it's not at all in a 6 or 7 wins kind of situation, because I do think that all the teams in this division may struggle to be bad, and there may be this kind of revisionist history on this division where, you know, we've consistently found out it's been garbage because they've won like 8 or 9 games, and I think there's a chance there's like multiple or 2 10-win plus teams. That doesn't necessarily mean they're good. It just means that the teams they play are awful. So I'm going to go for not at all. Next team is Neil's team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Biggest off-season headline is the rebirth of the man of 1,000 lives, Howie Roseman, the GM. Will this man ever die? I don't think so. He's had more comebacks than Jason in the horror movies. The big question, however...
I ask the questions.
Is this a top 10 offense?
It has the potential to be. It truly depends what offense we're going to see. Are we going to see the pass crazy, pass first, pass often that we saw in the first 7 weeks? Are we going to see the stuff it, let's just run it 50 times we saw from then on to the end of the season? Are we going to see somewhere in the middle? Whatever we see, it all is dependent on Jalen Hurts' development. Now, it's the first time since he's been at high school that he's been in the same system 2 years running. People harp on about this, and it's a somewhat over-egged pudding, as it were. But it is important. You know, we've seen playbooks. You know, we've seen how important, how big they are, how different they are, the different terminology. You know, the different there are the schemes that every NFL offense runs. But it can be as little as no, I want you to go high to low on this read, whereas the next guy, we go low to high on it. Little things like that. It is important. The Eagles have done the Buffalo Bills thing of, look, you might not be the answer, but we're going to put as much around you as possible to find out, while also keeping enough in the bank that if he doesn't seem to be the answer, they move on. No hard feelings. We tried. We gave you a shot. They have 2 very, very good wide receivers. Excuse me. They have an excellent receiving tight end, and they have a diverse and multiple run game. They can score a lot of points. They can score a lot of points. The defense is a lot better than it was. They just... Okay, I'll speak as a fan for a second. Can we beat someone, please? A team that matters. Not a team that... the quarterbacks the Eagles have beaten in regular season games since they won the Super Bowl. It's not an impressive list.
You've seen the schedule, Neil, so don't be thinking it's coming anytime soon.
No. So this is a team that could win the division, go up against a team in the playoffs and poo themselves. So, do I want to see regular season dominance? Yeah, I do. Do I want to see playoff wins? Yeah. Call me selfish. So, it's going to be a good offense. That's all I can say.
The third best quarterback they play this year, you could argue, is Kirk Cousins,
who always beats the Eagles.
Fair. I don't know how Philadelphia have again got themselves into a position where they seem to be really good, but also have a load of draft picks, which means that if this quarterback doesn't work, they can get one. I don't understand it. Like, they literally, in the last 2 times they fucked this up, have somehow managed to land on their feet both times and not have fucked it up. Like, I don't even know that's even possible. Like, how'd you get under from the albatross and on all the nonsense around Carson Wentz to 2 years later be in a position where you've got such an array of talent and 2 first-round draft picks next year? It's actually mind-blowing, and hence the rebirth of Howie the GM. A.J. Brown's huge in this, absolutely huge. If you get him running those routes that he ran in Tennessee for a limited quarterback like Ryan Tannehill, you could be in business. The problem that the Eagles may have is fandom over science, right? Whereas this team could quite easily win 12 or 13 games this year. Like, and I don't mean that in like some kind of, oh my god, aren't they the best team ever situation, we will get onto the schedule. It's unreal. This team could be the number 1 seed in the NFC and not be any good. But then what you do with Jalen Hurts, it's tough, right? But someone's going to have to make that decision. Do I expect Jalen Hurts to be better than last year? Yes. Is he elite? I don't think so. I don't even think he ever will be. Is he enough? Well, that's the $1 million question that someone's going to have to answer. Luckily, it's not me. This team's going to be good on offense. There's not many teams that could say A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders as a 4. There's not many teams that stack up on that. And, you know, that's not a blowing smoke conversation. Seriously, look at teams and say what teams can do that. Not many. So in a division that isn't great, with a schedule that isn't great, can this be a top 10 offense? Absolutely, because it's a cupcake schedule of the highest order. Let's find out who Neil's fancy darling is.
Hello, darling.
Miles Sanders has had an odd career. He came into the NFL and everyone thought he'd be an explosive runner, couldn't pass block and couldn't catch. He had 50 receptions for 700 yards in that first year and got better as a runner. Second season, couldn't catch a cold, couldn't block anyone on Twitter, and had found these massive runs. But ultimately, if you took his big runs away, I know it doesn't work that way, his true yards per carry was actually quite low. Then last year, doesn't score a touchdown, doesn't excel as a pass catcher in any way, shape or form, doesn't have the monster runs, but averages 5.5 yards per carry. Now, he's not been durable. He's missed games every season. This is his contract year. He's pissed off by the sound of it because he's decided that fantasy heads don't like him. It's because you don't score touchdowns, Miles. But he's going as running back 26 in a team that we know it's probably not going to be as run heavy as it was last year, but it is still going to be predisposed to run the ball somewhat. And if he's the lead ball carrier, he's going to get carries, and he can't possibly have that many touches and yards and not score a touchdown again. Statistically, very, very unlikely. So running back 26, where he's going at the moment, you're getting a solid running back 2 who could have weeks into just by weight of volume touch running back 1 airspace.
Tough one for Neil, but let's find out who he's down on. A.J. Brown is probably one of the best Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers in real life of my fandom. You know, I know there's been some duffers in that, but you're talking, Terrell Owens, Jeremy Maclin, Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey, Devonta Smith, and now A.J. Brown. In terms of pure, unadulterated talent. But we have the Titans scenarios last season. Are we going to give A.J. Brown 200 targets? No. Are we going to rely on him to be hyper efficient what he gets? Yes. Does that make him an automatic top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football? No, it doesn't. So while I think he's going to make the Eagles better, and I look forward to seeing the highlight reel plays,
we're never going to be in a situation where he's going to command a 30% target share or probably even a 25% target share. So we are banking on hyper efficiency at his current ADP, and I don't like it. I have to let him drop before I think about drafting him. I mean, I'm skittish about drafting the Eagles players anyway, but he's going far too early for my blood.
Philadelphia Eagles, more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
Week 18, just because I think they have the potential to win the division, but as soon as they come up against a real quarterback in the playoffs, they'll poo themselves and get beat.
This is where this becomes an interesting conversation, right? Because it becomes your definition of what in the Super Bowl is. So will they be discussed as being Super Bowl contenders? Well, let me give you their games up to the bye week. At the Lions, at home to Minnesota, at Washington, which is a home game, don't get it twisted, versus Jacksonville, at Arizona, at home to Dallas. At worst, that's 5-1. Off the bye, the next 4 games, at home to Pittsburgh, at the Texans, at home again to Washington, this time actually at home, at Indianapolis. Searching for losses here. Week 12, which is the Sunday night game, is against the Green Bay Packers, which could be 2 teams who've already won 10 games. Then play by the way, I just want to throw it out there right now. We're at week 13. The only definite, only one where you could say they should lose is possibly Green Bay. They haven't played the Giants yet. They then play Giants, the Bears, the Cowboys, the Saints, who I'm convinced will stink, and then the Giants. This has got 13 wins by accident written all out. And I come back to what I said earlier on. I don't think this team is great. I'm not even 100% sure if this team would win a playoff game. But they literally do not play anyone. I don't know how it's possible. They play what? Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott twice, Aaron Rodgers. After that, Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins. Wow, is all I can say. So I'm going to say in the Super Bowl, although I fully agree with Neil's sentiment that they will get beat by a good quarterback. But if you win flipping 13 games and are going to host a playoff game and maybe get a bye, I don't know how you're not discussed in the Super Bowl, even though I'm convinced that they're not any good. But that schedule is wild.
It really is.
Let's move on to the Washington football team, Commanders. But come on, we all know what should be the WFT. Biggest off-season headline? Well, let's give you 2. On the field, it was everybody's favourite lunatic quarterback Carson Wentz. Off the field, just all manner of shit shows, which has led to their owner having to do a Zoom call with the Senate in 16 days. Marvellous. Neil, we're going to do something crazy on the big question.
I ask the questions.
We are always negative on this team, and rightfully so. What is a positive outcome for them this season?
A positive outcome is they could win the division. The Eagles, as you said, have a ridiculously easy schedule, but they have question marks about their quarterback. And no one likes to use the word, but some people are getting the whiff of dream team about them.
Don't use that phrase. Yeah.
The Cowboys, again, could cowboy themselves out of things by doing something daft. And the Giants are the Giants. If if Washington can get the Carson Wentz for 13 weeks of last season. See, I'm not saying the 2017 Wentz. He was a mirage.
He definitely does not exist, people. He does not exist.
We're talking Anakin Skywalker here. He's gone. My friend is truly dead. If they can get a competent performance from a quarterback who's doing no harm,
correct.
Lean on the ground game, get the ball in the playmakers' hands, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, people like that, and everything else goes wrong, they could win the division. If some of those things go right, they could challenge for a wild card spot. That's the greenest, rosiest coloured picture I can paint for Washington. Because there's just as much chance that they start 0-6 and Rivera's out of a job after 7 weeks. If
we play the anti-Dallas Cowboys approach, which we discussed at the start of the preview, there is surely no way, with the talent on the defensive line and the talent overall on the defense, that they can be as bad. It should be physically impossible, and if they are that bad after 3 weeks, Jack Del Rio should be fired. We've already discussed on previous shows. We can't believe he isn't already. But anyway, is Carson Wentz an upgrade at quarterback? Yeah, by, percentage points, not by massive amounts. But does that help? Yeah. What happens if Doxson is good? We know McLaurin is good. Can Logan Thomas come back fit? What do you get from Antonio Gibson and Robinson now? This team is not going to blow teams out. This team wins games 21-17, right? So the question is it going to be, can the defense hold them? It can, because it has the talent to do so. Will it? I don't know. The last time I trusted this team was about 1992. So, yeah, I'm not really sure. What I would say is, and we'll get onto the schedule, their last game is at home to Dallas, which regularly means they have a chance to do something in the playoffs. That's what usually happens. They end up playing Dallas in their last game. Let's go fancy with this team, Neil, and talk darling.
Hello, darling.
The fantasy community as a whole wants Antonio Gibson to be a thing. Washington do not. They don't want him to catch passes. They don't want him to carry the ball 25 times and score all the touchdowns. So this makes J.D. McKissick, who basically they indulged in unethical practices, shall we say, to keep him around, at running back 57, makes him a bargain, because we know they're going to use him. Now, I'm not saying that that's a particularly league-winning pick, but at the end of your draft, you have something like that. What if their defense does crater? You've got a player there who, in your flex or running back 3 spot, he could get 8-10 receptions a game. If things go south, he could. And I say at that price, you're not really expecting a lot. So I just think, because of everything Washington are telling us, how they feel about Antonio Gibson, look elsewhere for the bargains. I'd much rather have McKissick at his price than Antonio Gibson at his.
By heavy way, Neil.
Running back 25, Antonio Gibson, because the fantasy community wants Antonio Gibson to be a thing. Washington do not. So again, they don't want him to catch passes. He's not going to get all the goal line work. They're probably going to work in Brian Robinson, and they're going to pass the ball to J.D. McKissick. So I can't get on board with Gibson at his current ADP.
But he should be good, Neil, right? This is the thing, and yeah, in fantasy world, he's just not.
He came into the NFL as a converted wide receiver.
Yeah.
So they then went about saying, we're going to make you a running back. And in all that time of making him a running back, they forgot he was a wide receiver. He can catch the ball. And now it's almost like they've forgotten it themselves. So we can't assume rational coaching. So when you can't assume it, don't take the risk in your own fantasy team.
Washington Commanders, the commies as we like to call them, more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
This is a quintessential not at all team. I'm terribly sorry. I say if everything broke right, they might win the division. And what? They won it the other year. No one cares. They're a nothing team. They're a wart on the bottom of the NFL. On the field, they've got some good players who I do like. Off the field, they're an embarrassment and a disgrace. And I wish them nothing but ill will.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's hard to argue. I listened to Tony Kornheiser's show, who's based in Washington, wrote for the Washington Post, and no one cares about the Commanders anymore in Washington, and that is unbelievable to say as someone who remembers watching them in the 1990s. What I will say is, they played Jacksonville, Detroit, Chicago, Minnesota, Houston, Atlanta, the Giants twice, and Cleveland. It comes back to the same conversation we had on the Giants and the Cowboys and the Eagles. The schedule is awful, like awful. So they are not at all team, but they're probably worse than that. They will probably be looking for a new coach by the end of the season, which is not an indictment on Ron Rivera. It's just how things work in the NFL.
With that owner?
Well, yeah, but with most owners, but especially with that owner. Until the owner changes, nothing's going to change. Regardless, I mean, not that you could get good quarterbacks in here, but yeah, there's nothing going to change in this franchise until the owner's gone. They are not at all team. And let's be honest, how many NFL podcasts do you listen to?
A lot.
A lot. I listen to a lot of NFL podcasts. People avoid talking about Washington as much as possible, and no one blames them. Because they don't do numbers, Neil. They don't do numbers. That's the NFC East. I think we both agree Philadelphia Eagles are going to win the division. Do we both agree that there's a high possibility that the Dallas Cowboys are a wildcard team?
Yeah.
And then Giants and Washington in some order. The Giants Washington Giants. I think the Giants would prefer to be fourth if they could help it.
Yeah.
Washington are trying to win. I'm not 100% sure the Giants are. There it is. The NFC East. Done and dusted. We will be back later in the week talking another division and another top 10 from Neil. Neil, before we quickly go, where can people catch you before we're back?
Follow me on Twitter at EdNorton13. This week I should have pieces out on a Meet the Metric for Player Profiler. I won't tell you what it is. That's what they call a tease. And also a player profile for Rondale Moore of the Arizona Cardinals. So look forward to them.
Fantastic. I am at Mindy7. Combined, we are at waxing_lyrical. It's hot. It's sticky in the UK. And this show is done and these top guys are out.